Elko at G. When I was young, I came home from a party in the middle of the night. When my dad were out of town, I started making a midnight quesadilla when I heard someone cough in the basement. I yelled and ran outside, and they took off through the backyard. Come to find out, my dad's ex-GF's daughter stole her key to our house and came to rob us. She was busted a couple years later doing this to her still. How were the midnight quesadillas? This scenario had porno potential, but you had to win it by yelling and scaring her off. Damn, that's scary. Registered. The whole thing would have been settled if you had a dick. A perfect porn scene. I was chilling on the couch, doing whatever, when suddenly a really heavy person starts sprinting in our attic. Sounded like steel-toed boots and everything. I'm a really small woman, so I immediately freaked out, thinking there's a gigantic man stomping around my home. Then the screaming starts. Literal fucking screaming, like something from The Exorcist. And there's multiple voices. I sneaked outside and cried, extremely shaken, and called the cops. Guess what's in my attic? Not a big rape. Why rapist? No, raccoons. Also, the raccoons were mating. That's what the screaming came from. I bawled to the cops about horny raccoons. I hope the cops were amused by the horny raccoons. I'll bet the cops were rather delighted for it to be horny raccoons rather than a man murdering some person in your attic. A lot less paperwork, and they still got to kill time. Years ago, a raccoon had crawled into my outside garbage can and could not get out. Meanwhile, I decided to take the garbage out before I went to bed. I didn't turn on a light, because I'm a grown man and ain't no monster in the dark gonna scare me. But CNCEN and my garbage growled at me in the dark and I almost shit my pants. I went inside and turned in the outside light and saw the little guy. I tipped the can on its side, and he ran off, and I bought some bungee cords to secure my can lid. Trash pandas strike again. Now I'm curious and I really want to look up how that sounds. But I also don't want mating raccoons in my search history. I remember opening the back door at night when I was young to let our cat in, and I thought I heard what sounded like a man being murdered. I ran to my dad to get him to come look, and he heard it and simply said, "Bloody foxes." And that was when I learned the noise of foxes. Coon story, bro. Sorry to laugh at your fear, but this cracked me up. I would be terrified too. But what it turned out to be is a great story. Thanks for sharing. That is both terrifying and hard to explain. Man is the raccoon's penis that longed for the other to scream like that. This can be the start to a new subreddit. LMAO. Funny in hindsight, but that would be terrifying to live through. You know, that's embarrassing. To think about how you feel if they found nothing at all. Also, I am guessing the police are much happier to have found trash pandas than, say, a delusional homeless person prepared to defend his attic with that shiv he made. I can't stop laughing. I'm sorry you were scared, but man am I happy you shared this. I was home for the weekend from uni, but my parents and siblings were away, so was home alone. Our house is quite secluded, with a church and graveyard next door and closest neighbors up the street but quite a bit away. I had all the doors locked and was settling down to watch a movie when the doorbell starts to ring, so I go to answer it. No one there. Then the back doorbell rings. No one there again. This keeps happening over and over, and it is pitch black outside. Then whoever it was began banging on windows and yelling. At this point I'm freaking out, so I begin to call the police and yell at the people outside that I've called them, when it turns out it was a couple of fellas from uni playing a prank on me. I was terrified and reduced to tears at this point, but they thought it was hilarious. They did a few more things like that to me over the 2 to 3 years I was at uni with them. And I always thought they were my friends. I'm older and wiser now to know that they were just cunts. Some people try to make sure people aren't home before breaking in when the intent is just to steal. And in rarer cases they will try to do this throughout many days in order to pinpoint the best window of opportunity for a burglary. But generally it's only the former. If the front door rings and no one is there, assuming I answered it relatively promptly, I automatically assume it's some pranksters. Quite a few sneaky kids in my neighborhood. Can it be both hilarious and super cunty? I remember when I was a kid, a group of us knocked on this younger kid window one evening and did a ghostly spook on him. It was so silly that there's no other description. You know, the classic lamenting ghost voice. But being about 10 or so, he did shit his figurative pants. He was a little arrogant, so kinda deserved it. Yeesh. If you're a woman, that's not a prank. That's cruel. With a church and graveyard next door, not exactly alone, but I was home with my newborn son and someone knocked on the front door. I was expecting my mother, but she usually comes in through the garage. I thought it was strange, but yelled, "Come in," because why wouldn't I? Then this cracked-out old woman comes stumbling through the door and asks me for a ride to the nearest gas station. I told her I didn't have a car seat for my son, so I couldn't go anywhere. So she starts screaming, "That's just inappropriate," and doesn't stop even when I'm telling her she needs to leave or I'll call the cops. After a minute or so, my mother actually pulls in the driveway. The crackhead sees the car and bolts back out the door, and I never see her again. That night my truck got broken into. Can't for sure say it was the same woman, but I have her description to the cops anyway. That seems a little too suspicious to be a coincidence. Something similar happened to my dad once. He was home alone and someone knocked on the door. He thought it was his friend, and he said, "Come in." Then he turned around and there was a random homeless woman sitting on the couch. Sleep paralysis. Waking up from a nightmare soaked in sweat, with a weight on my chest and completely unable to move. Sometimes I see shadowy shapes or feel there's someone watching. You sort of get used to it. I've had this a few times and it's so fucking scary. I try to scream but no sound comes out, and I try to reach for my fiancé but I can't move a muscle. All while it feels like I am being pinned down, and there's either a shadowy figure by my bed or I feel some kind of evil presence in the room. I hope it's a long time until the next one. My mum once shouted my name when I was home alone. She was in another country. It was midnight and I live in a 7-bedroomed house. Also, I once heard a scratching noise outside my house. Turned on the lights to see a rat had crawled up the window and was gnawing at the window frame. At 10 p.m., a home invasion happened to me, too. I was 12F at the time, homesick from school while my parents were out sleeping. Heard a bunch of noises. Went to living room. Saw a guy with crowbar trying to break into the house. Door had large window in it, so I could see very clearly. He saw me and ran off. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, chased after him a few feet, but he was long gone. When I was about 10 years old, someone kept ringing the doorbell for like 10 minutes. Was fucking creepy. Some of those church people can be very persistent. I get auditory hallucinations when I am tired. That's brought on by my anxiety. The one that caused the worst anxiety attack I'd had in months was just as I was drifting off to sleep, a guy yelled, "Hey," right into my ear, and I launched myself out of bed before realizing what had happened.